Hello everyone, this is Crota coming at you, giving you game number 2 in a series between Xiaokai and Yumiko. We see Xiaokai spawning on the top left-hand side of the map as the light blue or sky blue undead player. Meanwhile, on the bottom right, we have the gray human Yumiko. Now, this is going to be game number 2, and game 1 was really a showcase of one of the main ways you can win in WarCraft 3, and that's through economy. Yumiko set up his expansion, and pretty much, even though he did get outplayed at certain parts, he did take a very big risk in trying to set up those expansions, and he also did have favorable spawning locations, allowing him to set up that expansion without fear of that much pressure on that base. So a little bit of a lucky break for Yumiko as we now go into game number 2, and I am interested to see how Xiaokai is going to respond. Now, this is, I believe this is Ancient Isle 2, and one of the big items here is that there's a 533 creep camp here, and also if you take a look around the map, there is no there is no mercenary camp, so he's not going to be able to use that expansion and try to grab the Troll Shadow Priest and those mud golems early on like he did on Twisted Meadows. That is one of the reasons why Xiaokai probably chose this map. All right, a little bit of addressing the fans and the users out there. I heard a couple people ask me or just post on the YouTube videos why I mentioned the supply counts, because quote unquote it doesn't matter that much. This isn't StarCraft 2. Well, the supply counts in WarCraft 3, I would actually say, make a bigger difference because you actually get taxed in WarCraft 3 as opposed to StarCraft 2. If you're above 50 supply, you lose 30% of your gold every time you try and harvest. So that has a very, very big, profound impact on the game in terms of tempo. Whether or not you want to do a good balance of building up your army and also teching your army as well. You don't necessarily want to go straight into 50-60 upkeep or 55 to 65 upkeep just because you know that the undead player may be going straight into a higher tech and then being able to just create more efficient units for their supply. So that's one of the big reasons there. We are going to be looking at a Death Knight now making its rounds, and we should be seeing perhaps some militia running off to the north to try and set up an expansion here. Just because there is no mercenary camp doesn't mean that this map does not play well for human players to try and set up an expansion. One of the big problems, though, is that it is a little bit longer of a trek to get to this 3 o'clock location. We'll see if Xiaokai is going to be able to shut down his opponent from Yumiko from setting up that expansion, as I think that expansion should be coming out in just a little bit. You can see a lumber mill now being placed down. A lot of peasants are on that lumber line there, and I believe, yes, the call to arms is ready to go as the Death Knight is now coming back down with a larger army of skeletal minions. All right, there's a footman, there's those militia, and the Death Knight trying to perhaps get some easy free targets. There goes 2 skeletal minions there, and the Death Knight's army is now just that much weaker. We're going to see a little bit of a fight back here. This is not a good spot. The Death Knight doesn't like to be in this really, really strange position here, as the water elementals may end up getting a purge onto those, or getting purged. No, the Null Warden's very, very smart, making sure not to try and get that there, as the Death Knight gets a Death Coil, does steal a little bit of experience, and gets a water elemental as well. All right, is he going to be able to get more as we now bring an army of ghouls over? And if he can get that kill, that would be even better. The Death Knight almost to level 2, and the Archmage has to be very, very careful here. Skeletal minions, footmen abound, and who is coming out in the better side of this fight? The militia have now all come to an end pretty much, but the ghouls are also getting taken down as well. Ghoul getting saved right there. Skeletal minions will need to back off. More skeletal minions have popped back up. Those skeletal minions are a bit of glass cannons right now, as they do deal a significant amount of damage, 14 to 15, more than a footman, but they also have less life, significantly less, as the Death Knight now gets to level 2. Archmage sitting at level 2 with Claws of Attack +6, or excuse me, +9, dealing significant damage to the remaining skeletal minions, and we'll see whether or not we're going to be setting up an expansion. Yumiko had to retreat with many of his peasants, only 2 left out of, I believe, the 5 or 6 that he brought. More peasants are being trained, and they may also be called to arms off to the north as the Death Knight grabs Boots of Speed. And he's probably satisfied with the amount of harassment he was able to do. He knows that he isn't too far behind. He has the Boots of Speed, Staff of Teleportation. He is already at Halls of the Dead, so he should be training up that Lich in just a moment, as the Archmage now is going to be sitting on defense here for a little while longer. Now, this is where things get a little bit dicey for the Undead. Once the expansion and that Arcane Tower is up, the skeletal minions are not going to be doing very much of anything. Staff of Teleportation gets that Death Knight out of a very sticky situation already, but that Death Knight has taken significant damage. The Death Knight wants to get some Death Coils off onto some of those other units down over here, and it looks like the peasants are getting taken down. So this is actually somewhat working for the Death Knight, as this expansion is going to end up getting delayed further and further. All right, just take down that peasant there, and it looks as though the Death Knight will be forced to retreat. Another skeletal minion going to get taken out, as the Death Knight does have enough mana for 1 more Death Coil. That skeletal minion charge, perhaps a bit of a waste, unless it starts blocking those footmen and that water elemental from chasing. Death Knight needs to head off to the north, needs to regenerate some hit points. He is in a serious bout of hurt. Oh, I take it back. There is a mercenary camp in the corner. So yes, I'm not 100% sure why Xiaokai actually chose this map. Scroll of Town Portal now chosen as well. And this may be a straight repeat of what we saw in game number 1. Twisted Meadows. Once this expansion is up, the Archmage, if it does get to level 3, which it already is, should be able to drop water elementals and clear out this mercenary camp, grabbing Troll Shadow Priests and Mud Golems rather early. The Lich is already out though, so that does do a little bit of help for the Death Knight, as the Death Knight is not going to be by his lonesome self. Death Knight has to be very, very careful though, as we still don't have obsidian statues joining up with the army to try and heal. Actually, spoke too soon. There's an obsidian statue healing that Death Knight, and that Death Knight should be able to join up and start fighting again soon. Here's that Archmage dropping those water elementals, going after that Red Drake. Red Drake gonna get taken down. Where's the... No Troll Berserker, no Troll Shadow Priest, as the skeletal minion now trying to escape here. Let's take a look at the gold. Plenty of gold, plenty of supply. Not quite sure why he hasn't grabbed that yet. Lich is ready to go. There is that Claws of Attacks as the Archmage. Oh, Frost Nova going to be able to take down a footman pretty easily right there. Would have already been down if we had the Orb of Corruption, but the Lich doesn't really mind just going after those water elementals and trying to get even more experience. The Lich is pretty much in a situation where he knows that the Death Knight and the Lich need to kind of dive into this situation here, not lose that many units, and prevent these towers from getting up, or perhaps get into meat wagons. If he's able to stop that expansion, then the economic advantage that the human player is currently building will be all for naught, as he has invested a good amount of gold into that expansion there. All right, Footman taking a lot of damage, now getting focused back down. Water Elemental fighting back. There's a Death Coil onto the Forest Troll Berserker. It gets taken down rather quickly. Frost Armor, oh, Death Knight should be using that replenishment potion. Not quite sure why it isn't, as the footmen are now trying to flee. This is not going very well. Troll Berserker joining in on the fight, fighting those footmen once again, and it looks like the Lich and the Death Knight will come out a little bit ahead here, but it may not matter, as Yumiko is pretty much getting 2 for 1 in terms of gold every moment that this fight is going on. Archmage does have rune bracers, very, very strong, and Yumiko is just playing this straight up like a spike player. He doesn't want to do this with class. He just wants to straight up win, and he's going to be winning with the least classy way possible. Massive towers sitting behind expansions, and then trying to run over perhaps with siege engines once more. Water Elemental attempting to take down an Obsidian statue. Crypt Fiend's now looking to back off here. It looks like one footman didn't get the memo that he was low on life. Frost Armor onto some of the units here. Perhaps the Obsidian statue needs Frost Armor as well. Defend on the footman, preventing much of the damage so far, as the Archmage is still on the run. Death Knight should not be able to catch up to him all too much. There goes another Death Coil. The Acolyte unable to get in front, as you can see that the Archmage with the Rune Bracers and the Boots of Speed pretty much not in danger of getting taken out by the Frost Nova Death Coil of the Undead hero. All right, are we going to see a bit of pressure? Yes, we are. There's a Death Coil. Footman venturing forth a little bit too far, getting pressured again. Meanwhile, we need to see some Frost Armor onto some of these Crypt Fiends. Crypt Fiends can absorb a whole bunch of piercing damage with their armor type if they are careful. Acolyte trying to do a bit of a repair job here actually takes a bit too much damage on this Obsidian statue, as the Blacksmith now needs to get shut down. If the Blacksmith is shut down, then we will not be seeing those the workshop which caused so many problems in game number 1. All right, the Crypt Fiends are attempting to focus down the guard towers, perhaps focusing down the one that's further away here. Are we going to get a Death Coil? Yes, we are. And this pressure may end up working out as long as the Frost Armor and the Death Coils are enough to keep this army up and alive with the Obsidian statue as backup for mana. Things can start to work out pretty well. All right, you're going to see a little bit of slow. A second Meat Wagon now coming through, and it's now just dealing damage to perhaps many of the other units here. All right, where's that Meat Wagon going? Meat Wagon is attacking and dealing damage to all of those peasants back over there. Where is the Archmage during all of this? He is at level 4, and he is now also teching the tier 2, getting up that Mountain King here. All right, the Undead army looks like he can do a lot of damage. The Obsidian statues are in the back here, and the peasants are just trying to keep these towers alive. It looks like another peasant will get taken down. Death Knight could get off another Death Coil there. There it is, another save. And what is happening off to the north? Do we have a Scroll of Town Portal? No Scroll of Town Portal, as the Archmage pretty much coming in from the north side, preventing any sort of escape from that direction. Mountain King quickly gets a Stormbolt off, and the Archmage is going to be able to hold off this very, very long siege, calling in militia from the main base as well. All right, Stormbolt onto the Crypt Fiend. Crypt Fiend getting a Death Coil, but no Frost Armor means that he's going to get taken out very, very fast. Meat Wagon now retreating once more, and Yumiko bought himself enough time with constant repairs, and it looks like the economic advantage is going to start to take hold. Now, Yumiko, because he has that additional base, can go into low upkeep and still get 14 gold a second. Meanwhile, the Undead has to stay below the upkeep. So if he trains even one more unit now, he goes from being 10 gold to 7. And that is going to end up hurting him tremendously. Archmage now heading off to the north. Mountain King, Potion of Healing and Boots of Speed ready to go, and there you have it. A couple of Meat Wagons in a very, very tight situation. They're going to be forced to retreat again, as the Archmage and the Mountain King circling around these trees, going to get in a lot of free hits on some very, very vulnerable targets. All right, Death Knight now in trouble. It looks like he has a Potion of Invulnerability, though, so he's going to be at least okay for a little while. Meanwhile, the Meat Wagons are now being forced to back off again. Spellbreakers joining in on the fight, making it so that they can easily feed back the damage on those Obsidian statues and prevent them from healing. Ogre Maulers now being trained up by Xiaokai, adding in a little bit of extra muscle to this army. As you can see now, the Meat Wagon off to the north attempting to take down that one scout farm there. All right, this base needs to fall. Xiaokai knows it. Xiaokai knows that he cannot set up an expansion of his own. Much more difficult for an Undead to expand, so he's just trying to put pressure on this base. But the Undead army, or sorry, the human army has just constantly been in his face, putting down pressure, making it very, very difficult for him to really push anywhere here. All right, there's a beautiful Frost Nova across multiple poor peasants there, as peasants are falling. Meanwhile, if you look back to the north, the Archmage and the Mountain King gonna catch an Obsidian statue in transit. Very, very poor decision, unless he can perhaps grab a Goblin Zeppelin. There is the Goblin Zeppelin picking up that Obsidian statue and now heading back over. All right. the damage could start to add up to take down this town hall. Meanwhile, there goes one meat wagon under the fire of so many guard towers. Obsidian statues now trying to make their way off to the north here as the Spellbreakers getting in some easy shots onto the Death Knight as he loses a whole bunch of mana. Death Coil saved on the Mountain King. Mountain King also has the Rune Bracers. He's not going to get focused down. And I think with Yumiko's item advantage is just going to be far too much. His heroes are quickly catching up in experience. He has the economic and tech advantage, or should be able to establish the tech advantage. We are still at Halls of the Dead. We are not at Black Citadel, so without that Orb of Corruption, the focus fire of the Crypt Fiends are not nearly as strong. Water Elementals just splashing around on all of these poor units here. Poor ghouls getting splashed down. You can see Dark Rituals trying to add some extra mana onto the Lich. We can also see what Healing Ward, which could be placed down to try and keep up this Death Knight. Death Knight extremely low on hit points as the Spellbreakers are just eating through the Obsidian statues now. No destroyers possible as we are not at Black Citadel, and I think Yumiko is easily going to take game number 2 as the pressure just was not enough in this game. All right, Goblin Zeppelin now trying to retreat. Archmage getting in as much damage as he wants on that fleeing Zeppelin. Meat Wagon needs to retreat here as well, and it doesn't look like Xiaokai is just controlling his units all too well. All right, Burrowed Crypt Fiend. Are we going to perhaps see... Oh, come on. Dust of Appearance is available right there. Just buy it, reveal it, get a little bit of extra experience, but that doesn't seem to be the case. All right, Spellbreakers looking to clear out the Null Brutes here. Geomancer gonna get taken down very fast as you see his mana gets drained away. Spellbreakers obviously very, very effective against any sort of tier 1 or tier 1.5 caster unit. Meanwhile, Obsidian Statues looking to finish off this side over here, but Yumiko is in such a good spot that I don't think Xiaokai can do very much of anything here. All right, Spellbreakers charging up the ramp, getting an easy bash onto that Meat Wagon. Meat Wagon now in full retreat mode. Stormbolt going down. And Xiaokai is just trying to minimize his damage here. Meanwhile, Yumiko knows that as he doesn't really need to push into his opponent's base. He knows that he has the economic advantage, and at some point, the Undead will end up running out of gold. If he can wait that long, he can just out-siege his opponent and just constantly fight wherever his opponent is and make the game go as long as he wants. Mountain King sitting at level 2, though, really wants to get to level 3. Archmage sitting at level 4, getting a little bit more experience. I don't believe he will be getting to level 5. But the Mountain King is going to be very, very close to getting to level 3 after the end of this creep camp. Death Knight should be picking up a Tome of Strength +2, decides against it. Who needs an extra 50 hit points? Well, I think Xiaokai could really go for anything that gives him a little bit of a slight edge at this point, as the Archmage may be trying to clear out this creep camp over here on the bottom left. All right, you can see Scroll of Town Portal coming through. Army arrives to the party in time to perhaps throw the hammer and slow down all of these Crypt Fiends. There you have it. The Spellbreakers looking like they're ready to engage, but don't want to do it just quite yet. Siege or Meat Wagons just doing so much siege damage here. The peasants are massively repairing, and here we go. There is the fight. Ogre Mauler from the backside trying to come in, but ends up getting into a bad spot. Death Knight now sitting at level 5, so the level 5 Death Knight perhaps could get off enough death coils to really fight this all back. Spellbreakers and Militia leading the charge, but the peasants are now all going to fall. Stormbolt now going down on the Crypt Fiend, and the Death Knight pretty much knows what we can all see. This game is nearly over. Paladin very, very low on hit points, but can stay in the back and then just constantly try to heal all of these minor units. There are some heals coming in. Are we going to see a Meat Wagon taken down? Yes, we are. Obsidian Statues probably next. And as the big ticket items of Xiaokai's army is slowly getting taken down, what you're going to see is the Archmage at level 5, Mountain King at level 2, and Paladin at level 1, taking down the level 5 Death Knight and that level 4 Lich just because of the remaining economic advantage. We are now at 19 minutes 30 seconds. Yumiko is sitting on a 57 over 78 supply compared to 41 over 60. Yes, I reckon that Yumiko does have a lot more workers, but his economic advantage has just become too much to overcome, as you're going to see Yumiko's army being replaced much, much faster than Xiaokai's. Yumiko does have one knight. We don't see the crazy 0-3 upgrades that we saw in game number 1, but with the Mountain King now at level 3 and potentially the Paladin at level 2, Divine Shield is going to make that Paladin that much more difficult to stop. Alright, Crypt Fiends taking down this little bit of a scout farm. Not going to get very much. Yumiko sneaks away with the Troll Berserker. Not quite sure how that happened. Are we going to get a Frost Nova Death Coil? Down it goes. Free experience. The Lich and Death Knight now ready to try and siege this once more. But this has just been a funneling of a whole bunch of funds to try and take down this base. And this base has just stood the test of time. The Undead army unable to knock it out. All right, gold. We are down to 30 seconds left of mining there. Meanwhile, off to the north, we are down to 30 seconds right now. So what you see is what you're going to get. These bases have pretty much nearly mined out the primary bases, and then soon it will be 7 gold a second versus 0. So all that can really be done by Xiaokai is investing in everything in this final fight. All right, Death Knight up in the front. Let's take Frost Nova Death Coil, trying to take down units here. Lich down to 17 mana, not going to have very much. Mountain King healed back up again as the Death Knight now needs to retreat back. He does not want to engage up against these Spellbreakers, as the Spellbreakers are just stealing all of his precious mana. No more heals, no more nukes. The Death Knight now, however, getting nuked by himself, and the Death Knight now in a bit of trouble. He needs to be able to back off here, and it looks like he will survive ever so barely, but that Paladin is just dealing a good amount of damage constantly. If he can perhaps get a Holy Light onto another Crypt Fiend or two, perhaps even take down that Death Knight, that could be the end of the game. Mountain King, however, not Stormbolting the Death Knight, but I believe it still got taken out, and that is going to be the GG. Level 5 compared to a level 5-3-2. However, the resource score, the real telling difference there, as Yumiko takes this series 2-0. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it.